Welcome to the November 19th meeting of the CCTA. Is everybody awake? We now call the meeting of the Authority Board to order. We ask that you give your attention to a short video. Terry Ann, please run the video.
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Public speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The chair will call upon public speakers at the appropriate time. Each public speaker is requested to state their name and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Public speakers who wish to speak in person should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Public speakers participating by Zoom who are wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of any written correspondence would like to speak during the meeting, they should raise their hand or submit a public speaker card. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Terry Ann, please conduct roll call.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Here.
Commissioner Arnrich?
Here.
Commissioner Bernal?
Here.
Commissioner Burgess?
Here.
Commissioner Carlson?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner / Representative Nowak?
Here.
Commissioner Obringer?
Here.
Commissioner Xavier?
Here.
Vice Chair G?
Here.
Chair Meadows?
Here.
Representative Anderson is absent. Representative Foley is absent. Representative Worth?
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Terry Ann. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please mute your mics if you're attending remotely. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Terry Ann, have we received any written public comment?
We've not received any written public comment.
Any public comment here?
We have no public comment, written or verbal.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment item. We have one presentation this evening to be introduced by Matt Kelly with staff from MTC ABAG providing an update on the draft plan Bay Area 2050 plus.
Good evening, Chair Meadows and Commissioners. Matt Kelly, Director of Planning for the Authority. I'm very glad to be here tonight to introduce Dave Vaughton, who is Director of the Regional Planning Group at MTC and responsible for the RTP for the Bay Area, the Regional Transportation Plan known as Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus, not to be confused with the currently adopted Plan Bay Area 2050. I'm going to save all the fun for Dave and let him walk you through the draft plan, which is out, for comment and review and to get your input tonight. So, Dave.
Good evening. I'm Dave Vaughton. Thanks, Matt, for the intro. I'm with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and Association of Bay Area Governments, and I wanted to just thank you for the opportunity to share a brief overview of Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus, the region's long-range vision for transportation, housing, the economy, and the environment. Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus seeks to create a more affordable, connected, diverse, healthy, and vibrant Bay Area for everyone who calls our region home. All right. So Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus is a limited and focused update of our current regional plan, Plan Bay Area
Dave,
20.
hold up a second. Terry Ann, we don't have it on the screen here in front. Oh, so no, we're only seeing Dave's face on that. Sorry, Dave, but we need to see the slides instead. There it is. It's always impressive when our finance director do the
All right. So Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus is a limited and focused update to the existing plan, Plan Bay Area 2050. That was adopted unanimously by MTC and the ABAG board in late 2021. This update has been under development since mid-2023 and has been advanced by the Commission and Board at 3 key milestones through the planning process, most recently in the spring when it advanced the final blueprint into CEQA. Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus has included robust stakeholder and public engagement, collecting tens of thousands of comments over the course of 3 prior cycles, which provided opportunities for folks to weigh in on the future of our region and its diverse communities. In October 2025, MTC and ABAG released the draft plan document, draft EIR, and draft implementation plan for public review and comment. We're conducting public and stakeholder engagement throughout this fall. This is the final round of public input prior to bringing forward the final plan, EIR, and implementation roadmap to the Commission and Board in early 2026 for potential approval. So Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus must fulfill a wide range of federal and state planning requirements. Among those, it has to be updated every 4 years through a robust collaborative process. It can only include transportation investments that fit within a fiscally constrained funding envelope. It must accommodate future growth at all income levels. And most notably, it must achieve an ambitious per capita GHG target set by the state and fulfill air quality requirements set by US EPA. Just as important, I want to underscore what Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus does not do. It does not override local land use authority, it doesn't allocate any money to projects of any kind, and it doesn't impose any new mandates or propose new legislation. But what it is a visionary document that can serve as a North Star for our diverse region that spans urban, suburban, and rural contexts. This is the 4th iteration of Plan Bay Area, which was sparked by Senate Bill 375 in 2008, and it required regional agencies to plan not just for transportation alone, but instead to look at the intersection of land use, climate, and transportation. We recognize that planning is always just the first step in a long process, but it provides a critical foundation towards real-world progress and implementation. By pairing our plans with technical assistance and funding programs, after adoption, we're able to support accelerating trends towards more focused growth and less greenfield development while delivering projects that encourage non-auto modes. This is also why the plan includes a near-term implementation roadmap that delineates specific areas for partnership over the next 5 years. This graphic here shows a high-level overview of the plan, which is comprised of 4 elements: transportation, housing, the economy, and the environment. Its 11 themes and 35 strategies are also shown, and I'll just give a quick walkthrough of what's included. So the plan's transportation element focuses primarily on maintaining and optimizing our existing system, while also building out a robust network of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and building out an $80 billion transit vision. The housing element of the plan includes strategies related to what are known as the 3 Ps of housing: production, preservation, and protection. On the economic front, the plan's strategies focus on shifting the location of jobs and improving economic mobility. And last and certainly not least, the environment element has strategies designed to reduce the risk from hazards like sea level rise and earthquakes, expand access to parks and open space, and reduce climate emissions. So given that there have been a number of these iterations of Plan Bay Area, it's really interesting and important to focus on what's different this time. So here are some of the key changes. First of all, this was our first plan developed post-pandemic. We had a much clearer understanding of post-pandemic conditions than we did in 2021. Sustained remote work, slower transit recovery, slower population growth, and rising office vacancies are all baked into the plan. Second, it integrated significantly lower transportation revenue forecasts, roughly $80 billion less than the prior iteration. This required tough trade-off discussions, and the plan's housing strategies were recalibrated for a more fiscally constrained era with new strategies to reduce per unit costs. Third, it included that reimagined vision for public transit, which we call Transit 2050 Plus, which focuses on fast, frequent, all-day long services while prioritizing safety, security, and rider-focused improvements. Now that transit vision was a first of its kind, co-created with operator staff from BART, County Connection, AC Transit, and TriDelta over the course of the process. Fourth, this iteration wove climate resilience even deeper into the planning framework. It debuted a sea level rise resilience project list, which for the first time identifies funding needs for levees, seawalls, wetland projects, and a variety of other sea level rise protections beyond transportation. And last but not least, it did all this while continuing to prioritize high-impact strategies that are critical to achieve the state's aggressive climate goals. This necessitated continuing bold strategies like pricing, land use, and electrification. Now, at the core of the plan is a vision of focused growth, and we call these places growth geographies. They're comprised of both locally nominated places, like priority development areas, as well as regionally identified places that are key locations for new homes, businesses, services, and amenities. Across the entire Bay Area, they're anticipated to accommodate about 95% of all new homes and 72% of all new jobs. As you can see in Contra Costa County, these growth geographies include a wide range of BART station areas, as well as frequent bus corridors. They also include some notable priority production areas or industrial lands, especially on the northern waterfront. Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus envisions slightly slower growth in Contra Costa County than some of the other counties in the region, compared to Alameda and San Francisco counties, for example. It accounts for roughly 9% of all new homes in the plan and 8% of all new jobs. Well, I'm not going to run through all 35 of the strategies in the plan today. I just want to quickly touch on some of the highlights and how they relate to Contra Costa specifically. First, as part of strategies H3 and EC4, Contra Costa County is home to many of growth geographies, especially BART station areas and key bus lines. And focusing growth in these places has the potential to better connect homes and workplaces, reduce housing costs, and bring jobs closer to where people live. Second, while transit is at the core of the plan, we know that a significant number of trips will continue to occur by car now and in 2050. And strategy T8 in the plan includes smaller scale roadway upgrades on arterials, such as those identified by CCTA, like the Brentwood Boulevard Widening Project and the Byron Highway Connector Project, both in East County. Strategy T11 includes frequency boosts on the existing transit network, both for County Connection and AC Transit, as well as more frequent BART service on the yellow, red, and orange lines, construction of new BRT lines in both Antioch and Brentwood, as well as El Cerrito and Richmond. Strategy H8 includes public land investments as key locations for new housing and infill growth. And Contra Costa jurisdictions identified 20 of these priority sites for more affordable homes and services, all of which were woven into the land use vision. Lastly, on the environmental side of the plan, the conservation strategy, EN5, builds on Contra Costa's longstanding urban growth boundary commitments, and it reflects priority conservation areas identified by local jurisdictions to provide that quick access to nature that we all value so much. And the plan's electric vehicle strategies would double down on efforts here in the county, aiming towards 75,000 chargers by the year 2035. Just to zoom into transportation, since of course we are at a transportation board this evening, let's take a look at the transportation element for a moment. As I mentioned earlier, the plan would focus most money on operating and maintenance. 3/4 of it, in fact, is necessary just to keep our existing roads, bridges, freeways, and transit systems operating as they are today. Now, for the remaining monies, about 16% of the transportation element goes towards that next generation transit vision, fast, frequent services across the Bay Area, 8% towards climate initiatives and bicycle pedestrian improvements, and the last 2% of funding would go towards freeways, with less than 1% overall going towards capacity increasing freeways. Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus also builds into that the associated VMT mitigation costs under Senate Bill 743, as required by Caltrans. As mentioned earlier, the plan's environment element also includes a full list of all the sorts of improvements that are necessary to protect our communities from 4.9 feet of sea level rise. This includes a mix of locally developed and placeholder projects. After this work, we had estimated that the need across the region is more than $90 billion, and about $12 billion of that is located here in Contra Costa. And I do apologize for the graphical glitch where we've cut off part of the county. I want to acknowledge that in West Contra Costa, the North Richmond Shoreline Living Levee, among other projects, are part of the map as well, and all of this is available on our website. The other thing I'd note is that in Contra Costa especially, many of these projects are placeholders, and this means that either local planning is still underway or has not yet begun. And alongside BCDC, another key regional agency in this space, we want to make sure to work closely with jurisdictions throughout the region, including in Contra Costa, to make sure that lower resource communities are able to do the sea level rise planning that is so essential as these climate risks increase. So if the plan is implemented, what would some of the key outcomes be? As I mentioned, it is a vision that asks the question, what would it take to solve some of our big challenges? If we advance these strategies, we'd be able to see significant reductions in housing and transportation costs across the region. We'd have significantly more households, 45% more households living within a short walk of transit, as well as 40% more jobs in those places. We'd be able to double the share of folks who are commuting by transit, biking, and walking, increase open space, and grow our economy, all while achieving the GHG target set by the state. As mentioned, Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus lays out 60+ discrete priorities for the next 5 years, turning the long-range vision into a near-term list of actions. For many of them, MTC and ABAG may be in the lead, but for most, working in partnership or supporting efforts at the local scale. These include things like preparing for a new regional transportation measure, perhaps in 2026, supporting reforms to the planning framework under Senate Bill 375, analyzing post-COVID shifts in land use preferences and travel, and working on efforts like the Clipper Bay Pass and the transit-oriented communities policy. So thanks again for your time this evening. Next steps for Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus include a comment period through December 18th, and we anticipate an action item coming forward our commission and the ABAG Executive Board this winter. And I would be remiss if I didn't conclude by noting that our planning process really never stops at the regional scale, given the federal and state mandates to update these plans every 4 years. And in fact, we'll be kicking off a major update to Plan Bay Area, known as Plan Bay Area 2060, in 2026. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and I've seen this before and know other iterations about it. You know, here in Contra Costa County, we have our countywide transportation plan, and we're all involved in these things. So for our small cities out here, suburban cities out here in Contra Costa County, I know this is a vision, but how is this going to affect us? Or doesn't really affect us? It's kind of a vision, is it? And then maybe our county, like CCTA, takes this and we kind of follow along with it. But is there anything directly that's going to affect my city?
So
Because you say there's no money here, right? Yeah, I know, that's already there.
Yeah. So
I'm just trying to ask a very practical question, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think as I mentioned in my presentation, planning is the first step, but what happens after the plan is adopted? A couple different things, projects, transportation projects that are included in the plan are eligible for federal and state monies, and inclusion in that list is critical in terms of going after that funding. On the land use side of the plan, the growth geographies identified in this plan then become eligible for planning grants or get additional points in terms of future grant applications. So that's another angle as well. And then there's the kind of the list of different implementation actions, which, as I mentioned, is still very much in draft form, but those are efforts that MTC and ABAG would engage with in partnership with jurisdictions and with CTAs like CCTA over the next 5 years. So it kind of delineates a roadmap of future work. So that, I think those are maybe a couple of the key angles.
Okay, so in other words, you can kind of bless us maybe for some funding for some projects that might be included in all of this.
Yeah, that's one of the
Okay.
that's one of the implementation.
I'm practical.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Representative Worth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dave, thank you so much for coming tonight and for your presentation. One of the things, obviously, you're dealing with some seat changes and unanticipated, up to the COVID, and then really the big job shift. But one of the other things that we've been looking at in Contra Costa County for a number of years, and it seems to be accelerated, is the changing demographics of our population, which in many communities has resulted in more and more adults going from single car occupancy to relying on transit. Our local community transit. Really, we have the students and seniors and a lot of different ages. Do you see that as an evolving element in the plan as you're doing the work?
Yeah, certainly. Each iteration of the plan as we go forward, we notice that growing trend of more people in towards the higher end of the age spectrum, let's just say, and the changing transportation needs. One of the big changes we made in this plan is we updated several key strategies to address the needs of people with disabilities, which sometimes as we get older, those sort of mobility challenges emerge as well. And so there are specific changes in the housing element with the strategies to make sure that housing can be accessible, that we're making more investments in kind of transportation for those folks as well. So that's one of the areas we've been working on, but I think it's certainly something as we go into this next major update of Plan Bay Area where we may do some scenario planning to kind of look at different trajectories of the region and how that trend might accelerate further.
Great, thank you very much. I know as we look at the challenges going down the track for the next several years in transit, there's a lot of focus on the large rail, the bigger systems, but what we're seeing, as you've identified, is a growth in the local community transit use on a daily basis. Thank you.
Supervisor Burgess?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I was trying to find your presentation so I could catch what you were saying. You said that Contra Costa was growing slower than others. Can you tell me again what you were talking about at that point? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I was trying to find it and listen and.
Yeah, so what I was referring to there is, Contra Costa is a county of over 1 million people, in a region of 7.5 million. In terms of those shares of growth, it's actually slightly smaller than the population share of Contra Costa today. So other counties are envisioned to have faster growth than Contra Costa over the years.
In population?
In population and
Really?
jobs. The plan's strategies try to, focus growth near transit, near some lower VMT places to achieve our climate goals. And that means that places like San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland are anticipated to take on a bit more growth, or we're asking them to take on a bit more growth in order to achieve those goals. There, of course, is still, as I mentioned, 8 to 9% of growth, of the region's growth would happen here in Contra Costa. But I just want to highlight that, there are some differences within the region.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always think of it as one of the fastest growing areas in the Bay Area. So I got stuck on what you were saying. And then in your presentation, you talked about the importance of jobs and the greenhouse gas emissions and the existing infrastructure. So in this vision, what is the role of MTC and ABAG in actually helping create jobs in those places where we need to?
Like like in Contra Costa County?
Yeah, or like East Contra Costa County, where I just happen to live, where the longest commute in the country is, or something like that, yeah.
Worst commute.
Worst commute, excuse me, thank you.
Yeah. This has been one of those thorny regional planning questions that's been going on for many years. In our, we have a whole team of folks who do simulation modeling, try to understand land use dynamics, and it is very difficult to shift the location of jobs. We've tested, what would the effect be of job, incentive programs and the like to try to shift jobs closer to where people live. The plan does include some strategies in that space. They have more limited efficacy than we would like. And in fact, the commission did debate kind of how far to go on these sort of jobs housing balance strategies when we were doing that major update in 2020 of Plan Bay Area 2050. So my short answer is we haven't really totally solved it, because when we test out some of the strategies in this space, only strategies that are, let's just say, particularly ambitious, like job caps or things elsewhere in the region that are job centers, are sufficient to kind of push jobs and distribute them elsewhere in the region. The sort of incentive-based approaches we've tested today have, at least in our analysis, been a little bit less effective. So we're still, I think, kind of looking at, are there any other policy ideas out there to actually achieve that in real life?
Well, there's the housing incentives that help with keeping people going, but I know that there's a lot of us that would like to be invested in that and how to make that happen, because ultimately it helps us meet all of the goals that we're talking about. Thank you.
Great point. Commissioner Armrich.
Thanks for being here. I'm always interested in plans. I've personally been involved in numerous general plans and previous plans for the past 35 years. The question I have, a series of questions about assumptions. And I see the vocabulary, the goals, and the things we're trying to do in this plan. And I'll put this as a question, not a statement. But it appears, I would think, that, California was in a position of having population growth of 500,000 per year. People panicked. That meant I live in Danville, so 43,000 people. That meant about every 4 weeks you need to build a city that size just to keep up with that population. And, pre-September 2008, we were building this. If a person was alive, they could buy a house. Didn't care what their income was, didn't have to state it. You didn't even have to prove you had a job. And if you didn't have enough money for the down payment, they'd raise the value of the house and trade it off and do that. We now have about 1.6 million residential units approved by us public agencies. They're not being built. This report doesn't do that. It says, oh, we're going to encourage this and that. Fundamentally has no idea why they're not being built. I happen to know, I'm in the business. And it's government, by the way, that's causing it. We have a negative population. All of us do. The entire United States, we have a negative population. And it's actually getting worse. California isn't bad, but we have a negative population. It's not about people moving out, it's just birth and death rates. This plan doesn't seem to acknowledge that in any way. The paradigm has shifted. And in a few months, on March 17th, that's 5 months from now, will be 6 years since COVID. We are where we are. Are you still looking backwards for transit and transportation? Because it kind of seems like it's the same themes, the same as is. We are where we are. And we did something we tried for decades to do: smart growth. Definition was simple: live and work in your own community and don't commute. COVID did that for us. Technology solved it for us, and we can live and work. My community, 40 to 50% of everybody works at home, and we know that. Our restaurants, everybody is downtown every day. Our sales tax in those spaces went up. Not everybody can do that, but the fact is the world is where we are. And transit is different, and transportation needs have to shift. Do you believe that this plan accounts for that? Because if it says we're still looking backwards, because a lot of our partners all say, well, we're getting back. No, we're not. We can't. We are where we are. The world has changed. And unless you want to call it dumb growth, smart growth, we know what that was. Dumb growth is knock down your job centers, build houses, and they'll get in their car and go to work. If so, then we're going to need more transit. So what are those base assumptions about growth, a population, about transit? I did see there was the 20% of the 80 billion in the drop for transit needs. But are we acknowledging in this plan that transit will be different in the future? I don't see that. So there's a long list of questions, but thank you.
How much time do you have, Dave?
I got all night. I can talk about this stuff. Thanks for the question. Let me try to address a few of your points under the themes of growth and transit. So first of all, this plan did begin development in 2023, so it was post-COVID. We've integrated new data that has come out. I will say that our forecasts assume that growth is relatively slow over the next few years, but we believe that the economic fundamentals of the region, that our region's innovation economy, all of its natural assets, that those are things that are going to make it a continued economic driver nationally going forward. And so,
Is that ABAG? Because ABAG gave us, and some of us, 400, 600%, in our case, 600% more housing allocations. There's nobody there. So you're just said that you're going to assume that we're going to get more people in the Bay Area and we're going to continue to grow, even though the trend is we're not? And the trend is factual. Birth and death rates, talk to the March of Dimes. They've been tracking it for 40 years.
So the region did have challenges during the pandemic and lost population. However, the Bay Area is actually growing again as a 9-county region. The population of the Bay Area has risen over the past few years. Even though places like San Francisco have experienced declines, our region is starting to see positive growth in terms of population again. So I just want to acknowledge that. Now, going forward, of course, there are many, there are assumptions in the plan about policy changes to unlock housing opportunity for folks that allow people to maybe better afford living in the region. That is actually a statutory requirement of this plan. Now, we don't just assume that people migrate out of the region and have super commutes into it, but that we accommodate growth at all income levels. So I just want to acknowledge that. I believe you're referring to the RENA process. I will just give a quick tangent there. Yes, ABAG also runs the RENA process that completed a few years ago. We understand that that's been challenging with many of the housing elements across the region. This plan cycle does not have any connection to RENA. The next RENA process is still a few years away, and that large number of units that were assigned to the region didn't come from ABAG. It came from the Housing and Community Development Department at the state. ABAG has a statutory role of divvying that up through all the jurisdictions in the region, but we don't determine that particular number. On your question about transit, we made significantly different assumptions in this plan about work from home levels. In the past plan, we assumed that there might be some return to what you might call pre-pandemic normalcy, that there would be a little bit more work from home, but that it would be kind of a niche mode choice. In this plan, we're assuming that I believe more than 25% of folks are working from home on a typical day. That doesn't mean there aren't commuting needs, though. In fact, if you look at the data for the Bay Area, over half of our workforce can never work from home. And those folks still need to be able to get to their workplace. And then for many of the remaining folks, only a small sliver of them are fully remote workers. Most of them are commuting 1, 2, 3, 4 days a week. And again, they have transportation needs as well. We're trying to meet those with a variety of different travel options. There are major investments in transit, but there are also major investments in active transportation, which when people are working from home, we know that they have heightened needs for active transportation because they might want to just go for a walk to the cafe or go to the store, get some exercise, right? So we have made some of those targeted changes, but we still believe that transit and active transportation are critical modes in the post-pandemic context.
So, yeah, I agree with that. They're all critical. But I think what you just told me was, no, in terms of transit, at say, it's 45% of what it used to be. And it's probably going to stay at 50, 45, 50 forever. But just a second. That's what I see. You might not agree, and I disagree with you. But you sort of said, you're assuming it's going to get better. Do we need more people riding transit? Most certainly. That's what we're all trying to achieve. But I want to know is, are you basing it on the assumption they'll just come back and that we got to put more investment in that, when in fact, they're doing what we wanted them to do, not commute. Sure, people commute. I just came from San Francisco.
So certainly working from home does help us on VMT and GHG goals. We're not disputing that, but we know that, again, people are making non-commute trips similar to pre-COVID levels. We also know that people are commuting, even if it is a few days a week. So how do we meet those particular needs is the question. And we're not assuming that that happens without any sort of investment or policy intervention. For one, we need investment to just keep service levels in place, so that way we don't hit a fiscal cliff. But two, the plan lays out a series of different types of policy and investment changes in transit to try to encourage people to take more transit trips. Safety and security strategies are new to this plan. That's directly addressing the public feedback we got about transit. There are major pivot in this plan towards making service faster and more frequent, and that's designed, again, to encourage people to take transit for more types of trips. So we have made some pivots to try to, we're not just assuming the ridership will come, it is coming from those investments in the plan.
Thank you.
So Tim, you mentioned transportation projects. Are our transportation projects that we envision in the future included in this plan?
Yeah, the staff, we've been coordinating, with the MTC staff for the last 3 years in terms of the, the overall project list, in the RTP. There is one project that we still are looking to work with MTC staff to get into the plan, and that's the westbound State Route 4 project. There's actually an item on the consent calendar this evening. It's a RFP to do the environmental document for State Route 4 westbound, and so the nexus there is that if a project is not in the plan, then we can't approve the environmental document, and we can't get air quality conformity approvals from federal highways, and so it's really important to make sure we have all the projects. And I know we see the widening of Highway 4 between 242 and Bailey as a priority because that's highly congested. It was actually still a red congested spot even during the pandemic, even with everyone still, being sheltered in place. And it's mostly because of obviously the commute shed and trend going out to East County. And so that's one project that I know we've been talking with MTC staff about, getting a future amendment to the RTP to include into the plan.
Is that happening?
Yeah, there's been coordination, there's been discussion, yeah.
That also begs, did Valley Link get included in your plan? Because that's trying to help all those commuters.
So yes, Valley Link is included in Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus.
Thank you.
Midge. Oh, you go ahead, Sue.
You can go. No, that's right. I don't really have the questions for Dave, because poor Dave has to put up with me fairly regularly, so you're just lucky I'm still awake at this point, since I've seen this so many times. But I just wanted to address a couple of things. Diane's point on economics is something that we've been talking about for some time, because MTC and ABAG really are two legs of a three-legged stool. And we don't really have the economic incentive piece that I think is needed to really round out Plan Bay Area 2050. I have been talking with Bay Area Council for some time, and I actually just got this morning a very lengthy email from Bay Area Council on some suggestions as to how to put a regional economic development group together. I haven't read the whole thing yet because it's fairly lengthy, but I think it's a good start that they've are paying attention to what we've been talking about and trying to see if we can get something put together to make that happen, because I think that's super important. The other thing that I think is really important that Dave briefly mentioned is in Plan Bay Area 2060, we've asked, a couple of us have asked through MTC to do a little bit more scenario planning, because the fiscal constraints that are in the transit piece here include a measure being successful next year. If that's not successful, we got a whole different set of problems. And so we really need to be addressing some of the variables that might happen in the future. So 2060, as Dave mentioned, is really intended to bring some more of those scenarios together, whether it's transit funding or whether it's different growth rates or whatever. So that's really, I think, going to be really important in Plan Bay Area 2060 versus 2050. So all these things that people have been talking about will come, and I just want to thank Dave and his staff. I don't do it probably enough at MTC, because usually at that point I'm just trying to manage the commission. But they do a ton of work on this and get lots of questions, because when you're talking about a vision, everybody's got a different opinion on what that vision ought to look like. And it's so hard to take all those different opinions and different visions and make them work. So I really do appreciate all that. I did want to point out, actually, transit is coming back quite a bit. I think BART had its highest ridership since the pandemic last week. It's over 50% now versus 45. A lot of transit systems, Bill and Mercedes are out there, are at even higher percentages returns. So I think it's important to note that there is continued growth back in the transit side of things. So did I cover your point, Amy? Okay, all right. Anyway, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I mean, I saw somewhere in the slide, you talking about trying to lower housing costs? What's the plan? What's that plan?
So a few different things. As I mentioned, our housing strategies are all about the kind of 3 Ps, right? This idea of producing more housing, preserving and protecting existing affordable housing, and doing all of that to try to make sure that we have opportunities for people at all levels. A couple things here. On the production side, obviously there's all sorts of evolving state laws in this space. There's been huge efforts made at local scale. We know there are barriers when it comes to unlocking those opportunities for development, but building new homes is going to be a key part of bringing down housing costs. The other aspect is we know that deed-restricted affordable housing needs more funding. And this is something that has been explored at the regional scale before. The Bay Area Housing Financing Authority has explored putting a bond on the ballot to generate money that flows directly to counties and cities to do that. Now, that hasn't been put on the ballot before Bay Area voters yet, but it might be something that occurs in the years ahead, and that would be another critical funding source. There's been a lot of efforts in terms of housing funding at the local scale in specific jurisdictions through the region, but that would augment that and also make sure that all jurisdictions have access to affordable housing funding. And having that deed-restricted affordable, obviously, is key in terms of bringing down housing costs for those at the lower end of the spectrum.
So basically, it's a dream. I'm involved in housing.
Can I piggyback on that? You know, the thing is that living in East County, and I know I'm on a regional, so I apologize for, focusing, but it's a good example because we're talking about the Bay Area. You can talk about Contra Costa in general too. It's considered affordable compared to the Bay Area. When you go out to East County and you're going for the affordable houses, you're also talking about a much higher cost for commuting and for mental health and all of the challenges that come with a long commute. On top of that, as they become less and less affordable and the commute gets harder and harder, I think that's going to affect the prices of houses, and it's not going to be quite as inviting or wanting to live in those kind of places. We need to bring jobs there. And so I don't know that I've ever met you. I apologize if I'm kind of going at you because I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to speak up for a lot of people that, make a decent living and can't afford to live in the affordable areas of the Bay Area.
Well, and what's considered affordable?
All relative, but my own kids can't afford to live in the most affordable part of the Bay Area. It doesn't make sense, and they make decent living, but not enough to live and to think about. You hear about the younger generations not even expecting to be able to buy a house. And so to me, as our chair has said, it's kind of a dream. How do we create incentives for people to, build lives and contribute to the Bay Area if they can't even expect to have that for their own selves? Sorry.
So last week I saw a presentation on the October stats for East Contra Costa County in sales. Average sales prices ranged in our cities from about $635 to about $850 in the different cities. That's the average. And when you're looking at Antioch and Pittsburgh, you have condos and that are included where you don't in the other areas. So that brings the average down some, but Oakley was 700. So I just don't think that's real. Commissioner Nott?
I think part of, and this isn't really MTC's role, but, some of the stuff being talked about these days in Sacramento as far as streamlining CEQA and, reducing some of the costs and the regulations in getting housing built is a good portion of why it's costing more, right? And so those are some things that have to be dealt with at a different level in Sacramento, not really MTC level. So I'm just, it's something, we can take our piece of it in ABAG and our potential bond measure down the road can provide some affordable assistance in this process, but MTC's role is not really to solve the entire affordability issue here. And there's more to it than the regulations. It's also right now tariffs impacting lumber and steel, and
I'm just putting it on the
Don't roll your
record.
eyes at me.
It's the first part. I don't agree with the second part, but with CEQA, I would agree. And I understand it's maybe not MTC's role, but it was put in the presentation, so.
Yeah, it's,
that's-
I think the piece that we can make some assumptions on what we can do and what we're hoping to accomplish, but not all those pieces are necessarily our responsibility. We can certainly work with Sacramento on some of those pieces, and we likely are, especially with our potential bond measure in the future. But and looking at other ways to incentivize more production and protection as well to preserve those housing that are there. So anyway, there are areas that we can impact and there are areas we can't impact. So I think Dave's just pointing out that those areas that we can impact, we'll work on that.
Vice
Sorry,
Chair Gee.
Dave, speaking for you.
Vice Chair Gee.
Dave, thank you very much. I just have one, whoops, I'm sorry, I have one additional question. I got so excited that you called on me, so.
I call on you every time you
So,
light up the mic.
The question I have for you is, realizing how visionary this is and all, and we know these are very, up there kind of goals. But my question is, and it's not explicitly in here, and I haven't studied all the background detail that far, is it assumed or what are you showing in terms of mode shift? You're talking about transit getting so much better and all that. Believe me, tonight, as I drove here from Orinda to Walnut Creek, I still can't believe that I have to allocate an hour to get from Orinda to Walnut Creek at the time of night that we come here. Oh my gosh. So is it anticipated that, if you had all of this, very best case planning scenario, what are you looking at in terms of mode shift, or are you at all? Because it's always been very low.
So I think there was a statistic on one of the slides, but we expect the non-auto mode share to roughly double compared to 2023 levels. You're correct that when we look at all trips, there's still going to be the large majority will be occurring by car. Our goal is to get people off the roads, especially at peak hours when congestion is worse. And this plan has the majority of folks either in terms of their commuting, taking transit, walking or biking, or working from home on a typical day. So the minority of folks would actually be using the car to go to work. That is, what we see as kind of necessary to avoid gridlock and also to achieve the climate goals that are laid out in the plan.
Commissioner Culberson?
Yeah, I get we're here and we're transportation tonight, and that we often link transportation and housing very close together. But remember, it's a vision planning document that covers a lot more. I wish it did have more on economic growth opportunities and how we could kind of weave that all together, because it's a nasty spider web we look at. But for like us at the county, what we saw in Santa Clara, we keep talking about money. It's always about money, putting money into housing. We're looking at, just like Santa Clara did, what are we going to do to keep our hospital and our healthcare system operating? So there's a lot in here, but there was also strategies for sustainability. What are we doing at the county? What are we doing in our communities to drive EV or EV charging, all the different things we're trying to do to make the community more accessible, less need to rely on commutes and long-term travel, those types of things. So it's much broader than just transportation and housing.
Commissioner Honrich?
I just had a comment in general that, and it kind of goes back to Chris's original question. Ultimately, this is about money. Policy sets future funding. So most of us in the room, there are 9 cities that kind of qualify because of PDAs and things like that. Some of them don't want PDAs, but they're forced to do it. And the other ones can't do it. We don't have that transit. We're never going to have those transits. So what happens is we're never eligible for any of those programs. So from a funding point of view, that's a funding plan. It's not in it, but it becomes policy, which then sets that framework. It's a utopian view of the world that isn't realistic necessarily to most of Contra Costa County. So we don't benefit from the plan, let's be honest. Does Orinda, does Lafayette really want high-rise buildings? Is the only way they're going to qualify for any money? There are communities that desperately need other funding sources, but on a whole bunch of reasons, post-Prop 13 cities, they get the least amount of funding, like us. I mean, it's so low of funding, you'd be amazed of cities who have been around, like Walnut Creek, who get 22% of property taxes, and the rest of us get 6.8, 6.9, 7.1. So there you go, even worse. Well, that's because, but the reason why you get less is your recreation was pulled out and they get a big chunk. They're well-funded. But my point is this really is a funding plan, and that's what is unfair to the process. Great for the Bay Area, great for one entity to say, we're all going to do this kumbaya, but ultimately, it sets a funding thing, and we just have to recognize if you don't get OBAG grants, you don't get anything down, you are definitely not going to get it in this plan. And we have to be realistic. And is there a way through this process to recognize that there are rural cities, which we represent more of, that have different ways? It's not that they don't want to do it, it's just it can't happen. There is no infrastructure, nor will there ever be the money for the infrastructure, but we're going to get penalized in the process. So high-level view, that's my opinion, and we've seen it happen, and it doesn't make any difference who's sitting in the chair. The results all end up the same way.
So actually, you should have been at this morning's meeting when there was a specific carve-out for OBAG 4 for rural areas. So, yeah, so I anticipated that. So that was, but there was a specific carve-out for that specific reason for rural communities today. This morning, that was discussed at our TOC OBAG lengthy meeting this morning. So just to let you know that.
And I was sitting with Santa Clara Transit Agency and San Mateo Agency in Kansas City on a panel today talking about transit in the future. It's different in this plan. It's realistic about what the future is going to be. It's not going to be looking backwards. It's 100% about looking forward to the future. Having what we have on streets right now, they're not going to exist. The manufacturers were there. They're going to stop building. You know, the federal government, at least for the next 3 years, who knows what they're going to do? Yeah, crazy. But my point is, it's not going to be there. So this is utopian. It's great, has some good values. But when it comes to transit, it's looking backwards. Sorry, that's personal opinion. That's too
Commissioner
bad.
Obringer?
Thank you. I have two quick questions, at least I think they're quick. So how much of, in terms of achieving sustainability goals and transit use, because I know there continues to be the financial motivation to site affordable housing within walking distance of BART stations. And so how much of the plan anticipates that everybody, or pretty much everybody who lives in one of these transit-oriented developments is going to take BART to some job somewhere as opposed to using their work truck or their van to do house cleaning and landscaping and that kind of thing?
So I don't have a statistic to give you on a specific development site, but what I would say, as I kind of mentioned on the mode share question earlier, is that we're not assuming that everybody who lives near transit is going to take transit for all of their trips, nor would it be appropriate for every household. We know that for a lot of households, there might be one person who does take BART into Oakland or San Francisco for their job, and the other person might drive to a job center that's not well connected by transit. But there's still a benefit to having that housing unit close to transit. The other thing that I would bring up in case of these, the example with the affordable housing development is it's about bringing people into places where they can take a few more trips by walking or by bicycle and getting those cars off the road as well. So I'm sorry I don't have an exact statistic for like a development project per se. But what we do know is when people live closer to transit, they take more transit walking and biking trips, even if they still have a car and use it for many other trips. And I think that's part of the idea, with transit-oriented development.
Well, we're getting a lot of affordable housing in downtown Concord with one parking space for 4-bedroom units. So I'll let you all know how that goes.
I can guess.
Well, we've got half the people moved in. I'll let you know what happens when the rest. Anyway, and then my other question is just, with the sustainability goals and with the change in course under the current presidential administration, how much, and there's not, the funding incentives for the EV chargers and the building electrification and all of those things. So how does that drastic pullback of federal funding impact this plan?
So a couple things on this. Our estimates of GHG reduction under statute actually exclude action from the federal and state government. So one, what I want to call it a silver lining, but those estimates still remain accurate. All those state and federal actions kind of stack on top of it. So our alignment and what we were able to estimate for our performance for this plan has not been, the rug hasn't been pulled out under us in terms of the quantification. Now, we do know that funding availability will certainly be impacted in the years ahead. There are obviously major state investment programs in those space, but there were some unique, perhaps one-time programs that existed under the Biden administration that will not. As you know, I think we've tried to be conservative about those assumptions when we were doing the revenue forecast for this plan, but when we go and do this major update in Plan Bay Area 2060, we might explore some different scenarios, kind of asking the question, is this current era going to continue for quite a while, or might the federal government re-enter the climate space and start funding those things again and try to look at some different, understand our gaps and how they would differ under those different trajectories.
That's good to know that we're not dependent on them for those things. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Terry Ann, do we have any public comments?
We've not received any public comment, written or verbal.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt and Dave, especially Dave. Sorry, Matt.
Come back anytime. We love to talk.
We'll now move to the next agenda item, the consent calendar. Are there any changes or comments from the authority board? Does anybody wish to pull an item? Is there any public comment?
We have no public comment, written or verbal.
Do we have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Terry Ann, could you conduct roll call, please?
Commissioner Armstrong?
Yes.
Commissioner Arnrich?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernal?
Yes.
Commissioner Burgess?
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes?
Commissioner Obringer?
Yes.
Commissioner Xavier?
Aye.
Vice Chair G?
Yes.
Chair Meadows?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next up is regular calendar. The first item is an informational item from the Administration and Projects Committee to be presented by Sham, seeking feedback on the draft 2025 Measure J strategic plan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm happy to present this plan. It's a different type of plan, hopefully more fun. It's kind of a financial plan, and it focuses on our small ward of Measure J rather than the entire Bay Area. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation for this. You've probably have seen some of the slides. I've been to the RTPCs in the summer, in July and September, so some of it may seem familiar to you. So this is an information item. We're presenting you the highlights of the plan today. And we're going to seek your feedback and incorporate it in the final version, which we'll bring back to you next month for adoption. I'll be talking about 4 or 5 things in this presentation. One of them is our revenue forecast, which is the basis for our strategic plan. We're going to talk about the additional programming capacity and how it gets split by subregion. The programmatic construction reserve, which is important for us, especially in the next 3 years, the TLC and PED bike program, as well as finally we'll talk about the remaining projects in Measure J. So with that, thank you. Just a little bit background about Measure J. You know, we have less than 9 years before it expires. It expires in March 31st, 2034. The expenditure plan, which was approved by the voters in 2004, it guides how we spend our Measure J money. 57% of our revenue go to programs which mostly get allocated on an annual basis, like your return to source money, the Express Bus money. And the remaining 43% is what pays for project funding. Not only that, it also pays for the debt service on the bonds, our program and project management costs, as well as any reduction in future revenues. What the plan doesn't tell you is which projects to do first. It doesn't tell you how to pay for debt service. That's why we do the strategic plan. Major outcome of the strategic plan is what we call the program of projects. It's basically a table that shows each project that will be funded, how much money they're going to get in Measure J, and in what year. We committed to update the plan every 2 years because our revenue assumptions, inflation assumptions need to be reviewed. Ultimately, the goal of the plan is to ensure we don't overcommit our revenues, that our expenditure at the end of the measure do not exceed our revenues. That's the ultimate goal of this. It also helps us manage our cash flow as we get to the end of the measure. And it helped us in the past to figure out how many bonds we want to issue and when to issue them to advance the projects. This plan is unique because it's the first one out of the 8 we've done so far, that looks all the way to the end of Measure J 2034. Just highlights from the 2022 strategic plan, sorry about that typo, which was the last strategic plan you adopted. Last 3 years have been great in terms of our revenues. They've exceeded our projections by about 15%. That's great because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. If we hit a bump in the economy, then this helps us level the impact. It's about $48 million more than what we projected. Earlier this year, thanks to the great work of our CFO, we saved about $7.9 million in bond debt service cost by refinancing one of our bonds. That money comes back to the projects. Also, last year in October, you heard about the MEGA award, and also June this year, we heard about the TSIP award in SB1 for 684. That's great news because it helps us move these projects into construction. On the other hand, every time we get these fund sources, we are on the hook to fund any cost increases on these projects. So we need to plan for that. Also, we need to take into consideration the impacts on our cash flow. They don't give us checks up front. Everything is reimbursement based, so we have to advance it and then seek reimbursement. We anticipate to have the largest construction program, I think, since we've started in the next 3 years, over $600 million worth of construction contracts for some of the major projects you see on the screen. And not only that, in the last few years, we've been taking a bigger role in implementing non-Measure J funded projects, such as the countywide smart signal projects, the 5 Safe Streets for All projects, and the signal earmarks. So we need to take that into consideration when we do our cash flow and analysis. So let's talk about the revenue forecast. This is basically the most important assumption we can make in the strategic plan. We brought to you an updated revised forecast in June of this year. HDL did our forecast, and we presented to you a baseline as well as a conservative and an optimistic scenario, and you approved the baseline, which is shown in the dark solid line, the black line. The red line is what we had assumed in the last strategic plan. You can see the last 3 years we were highly above what we assumed, which is great. But moving forward, you can see from the slope of the line, we're assuming slower growth, which is a good thing to be conservative, given the number of years left on the measure. Overall, under the baseline scenario that you approved, we're going to have $60 million more in Measure J money over the life of the measure, $2.648 billion compared to the $2.58 billion we assumed in the last strategic plan. So that $60 million, just because of the way the expenditure plan was written, 57% will show up in the annual program allocation, so everybody benefits from it. The remaining 43% will be available for capital projects. When you add to it savings from the bond refinancing as well as completed projects, we basically have about $37 million in additional capacity available to capital projects in this plan. So how are we going to program that? So before I get into that, I just want to bring up this slide, which talks about the importance of geographic equity in this county. When we did Measure J in 2004, we talked to every RTPC. We told them, here's your share based on your population. How would you spend it? Some said we have a bigger need for capital project like in East County. And some said we have bigger need for programs like in West County. So because the strategic plan looks at capital project, you'll see that the strategic plan funding for capital project in the strategic plan reflect the pie chart on the left. So about 49% will be for of the funding will be for projects in East County. About 8% will be in West County. That doesn't mean West County is not getting share. They're just getting it more in program allocations. And you can see on the right chart, East County is actually getting the least amount in funding in terms of program allocations. So with that in mind, the strategic plan really will meet the targets that are set in the expenditure plan. So when we finished drafting the strategic plan, we always check to make sure that the money programmed in each subregion matches those targets. So we break up that 37 million based on these targets, and that's how much each subregion gets. About 19 million in East County, 12 million in Central County, and so on. Well, when we came to you, I think last September, we talked about the programmatic construction reserve. In that last strategic plan, we had 5 million set aside in that reserve to help us cover unanticipated cost increases on project under construction. We actually ended up using it on the claim for 684. If we didn't have it, we probably would had to take money from a project, another project, which is not something you want to do. So you instructed us to replenish the reserve. We didn't, of course, at that point, we didn't know how much money to put in each reserve. So we did our analysis, and based on the size of the program we anticipate in the next 3 to 4 years, we are basically programming the entire additional capacity in that programmatic reserve proportional to each subregion share. If we don't end up using, we'll come back to you to program it in the strategic plan. If we need to use it, we'll also come back to you to seek a strategic plan amendment to move some of that money to the project where it's needed. So it's being parked there to give you a resource to deal with all the projects that are going to be under construction in the next 4 years. Everything you see here is funded except for San Pablo Dam Road, I-80, which we'll talk about next month and provide you an update on that. Let's talk about the TLC and pet bike program. When we did the last strategic plan, there was a policy to defer the programming of the third cycle because we were anticipating to have some cash flow issues. Fortunately, because the last 3 years' revenues were better than what we're projecting, that never materialized. So we already issued 2 cycles in 2012 and 2016, and we're recommending that you issue the next call for project in 2026 and to remove the hold on programming those funds. That's $40 million plus that will be available to the cities basically next year to program for various projects. And if you look overall, high-level view, we have $790 million roughly programmed in the strategic plan for capital projects through the end of the measure. We've already spent $721 million of that, most of it basically. What's left is the $70 million. It's already committed except for the new $37 million that I just talked about, which is sitting in reserve. We're pretty much finished with 80% of the projects in the strategic plan, and our leverage rate has improved. It went up from 2.8 to 3.2 now overall. And if you look at CCTA implemented project, it's actually higher, 4-1. So that's good news, but the Measure J was really never meant to fully fund projects. It's a tool, it's a match source to bring in state and federal money. And looking at our strategic plan, that $790 million brought us about $2.5 billion in state, regional, and federal money, allowing us to deliver over $3.3 billion worth of projects. So these are some of the projects we completed. I'm not going to go through them, but they're in your slides. But our job is not done yet. There are still some projects that needs to be done, the ones you see on these slides. Some of them are we're short on funding, and we're struggling to find matching funds, like San Pablo Dam Road, the Highway 4 operational improvements that we just talked about. We still need a lot of money, a lot of matching money to bring, to build these projects. There are 5 or 6 on this list that still are not funded, and our job is not done. We still need to look for funding to get them done. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. The goal is, of course, as I mentioned, to get this to you next month for final adoption.
Thank you, Sean. Are there any comments or questions from the authority board? Wow, none. Are there any public comments?
We have not received any public comment, written or verbal.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Did you?
I was just getting ready for the next move to make a motion.
It's not a, yeah, it's just informational item. The next item on the, is an action item to be presented by Tim on the selection of a consultant team to support the development of new transportation expenditure plan.
Thank you, Chair Meadows, and Hisham couldn't have teed this up any better for this item. So as he just pretty much wrapped up, there's a lot of projects and needs in Contra Costa County that need to be supported in our local communities and throughout the county-wide programs and needs. And so I think in June of 2026, this board actually authorized staff to start looking into developing a transportation expenditure plan, to start looking at how we're going to fund these additional needs. And so since then, the CCTA staff has really engaged in a process to find and select a consulting team to help us develop this transportation expenditure plan. And we took basically like a 2-step process. Tonight, staff is asking for your support and approval on the selection of this team. And then that'll allow us to begin negotiations with the team on a cost proposal and scope of work and an agreement. And then we would bring something to the board either in December or January for final approval for actual agreement. We took the 2-step process because we want to make sure we have your support and consensus before really start working and developing a pretty in-depth scope of work and cost proposal with this team to develop this expenditure plan. So we evaluated consultants in 4 different categories. One was what we're calling the technical consultant. And this consultant would help with the actual development of the transportation expenditure plan. So the actual content, writing, et cetera. And also they would help with the technical evaluation and analysis of the projects and programs that would be put into the expenditure plan. And we're going to talk a lot about obviously how we're going to do that, in the future. The other element this is really helping with developing, collateral and graphics, and also helping with the engagement process. So we're kind of calling that the technical consultant. The next consultant is, we call this the strategic consultant. So this would be the consultant that's really helping us develop the strategies, messaging, and really helping us to guide the actual development and strategies in the expenditure plan in order to really seek the support of our constituency here in Contra Costa County, as well as the authority board. The third category is public opinion research, and as you know, as you're developing an expenditure plan, it's really important to make sure that we're engaging with the public, getting their input, understanding what their needs are and what projects will benefit them as we look about developing an expenditure plan and how we select the projects. And then the fourth one, let me see, so I think that's all of them: technical consultant, public opinion research. Communications. So the fourth one's communications, and the communications consultant is really helping us do developing media, developing content, graphics, all of that materials. And so our team here at CCTA, we split off and divided and conquered, and we evaluated consultants in each of those 4 categories, which is in the staff report. And through the evaluation process, we're recommending that we select an integrated team. That Fair and Peers was selected for the technical consultant. And they really showed a lot of in-depth knowledge about the county, the needs, the projects, and a lot of in-depth knowledge relative to our new travel demand model that the board approved, I think it was last month or the previous month. And they have the most experience in terms of using the model and applying the model and helping to evaluate those projects. And then in terms of the public opinion research, we're recommending EMC research for that, and mainly because they have probably the most amount of data in Contra Costa County, most historical data. They have been involved with a lot of the previous polls in Contra Costa County. They also will be supporting MTC on SB 63. And so we feel like they will have the most data and the most knowledge about what's happening on the ground with the public. And then the communication consultant, we're recommending Civic Edge, and this is a consultant that our team and the Director of Social Affairs and her team have been working with, and we've been very impressed with their work, their graphics, et cetera, and their team. And then from a strategic consulting consultant, we're recommending Clifford and Moss. And this consultant, we interviewed 3 and even talked to even more than 3. At the end of the day, I think we talked to roughly 4 or 5, but it really came down to these 3. Dodd and Chaban Strategies, BMWL and John Whitehurst. Some of you are familiar with John Whitehurst's work, as well, and then Tommy Clifford with Clifford and Moss. And so Clifford and Moss and BMWL were pretty much at the top of the evaluation. And as we started really calling around and talking with folks and references, et cetera, Clifford and Moss really kind of pulled ahead based on a couple things. One is Clifford Moss really has a track record of really going into areas when measures have not been successful and being able to get them over the finish line. Particularly the last one was Alameda County Transportation Commission. Measure B failed, and Measure BB was successful, and that was based on the support of Clifford Moss. Monterey County had 2 failed attempts, and they were able to go into Monterey County and really, and also get that one over the finish line as well. The other thing is that based on a lot of the feedback and comments, their ability to do really genuine coalition building, both with the boards, stakeholders, and local jurisdictions across the board. And I think you're all very aware that I think this is something that's going to be really needed in Contra Costa County to really get into a successful position, is making sure everyone is really talking about this expenditure plan and getting the input that we need and the support we need across the board, across all 19 cities and the county, cities and towns. And then the other thing that was really also a factor is just their ability to really just concisely message and be able to really speak to different parties and different people and be able to translate that message very creatively and be able to really speak to, I'll call it, the individual, right? And so their ability to really understand what the local needs are in each community and how to translate this into those communities was also a strength of Clifford Moss. And so we're recommending Clifford Moss. And so the next steps with all of this is we are recommending that this be an integrated team. So rather than entering into an agreement with 4 separate consultants, we're going to be integrating the team with Fair and Peers taking the lead as the prime consultant. And then we would have the other 3 consultants be sub-consultants of Fair and Peers. And that really helps us, basically management, streamlined communication, consistency, and also consistency on our side in terms of having one project manager. The project manager from Fair and Peers is actually here tonight. He's standing right there, Nate Conable, and he works for Fair and Peers, has a tremendous amount of experience, both public and private sector. He's also been supporting us with the countywide transportation plan, so you'll be seeing and hearing from a lot from him tomorrow at the board workshop. And I can tell you that I am extremely excited about this team and about the work that we're going to do with this team, and really optimistic that we're going to be successful with this team. And so I'm really looking forward to working with all of you on this and working with this team, and we're going to get this done. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Kelly.
Yeah, I always get your attention first. First question, 5 million from interest on the program reserve. I'd like to ask Brian, is this enough? And do we already have 5 million in our piggy bank? I just want to know. Or are we getting close to it? I know we're earning interest.
The latest through the 2025, I think we have a little over $21 million in there. $19 million is excess reserves, sales tax reserves that are in there, and I think it's $2.1 million on that worksheet. And so over the next couple future years of interest earnings, I think we should get there.
Okay, great. So it's going to take about 5 million. Okay, I always like to talk to the money man. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
The second thing I want to say is, in terms of the team, it looks good. I have respect for Fair and Peers. And EMC, you know, they've done the polling for SB 63 at MTC, and I've been very impressed with their presentations, because the question that they ask is not, would you like this, or would you like that, or rank so much, is, would you vote for? And that's the important question to ask, because people will say, you know, like at our events, oh, yes, I would like this and that, and gee, this is great. But if you come down to the average person and say, would you vote for A, B, C, D? That's the important question, and that's what we want to know, and we want a really honest answer, not lead-in questions, an honest answer. So I'm pleased to see EMC will be on board.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Unrich.
Oh, I was pointing to her.
Okay.
She did
Vice
hers
Chair
first.
Gee.
Tim, I just wanted to say thank you to you and your staff. I know you put an awful lot of work into creating and formulating this team, and I think you've done a superb job. I've had the pleasure of working with every single member firm that you've put on the team, and I worked extensively with Clifford Moss on Alameda BB and Measure RR for BART. So I'm very familiar with a lot of what you said, and I think that this team is going to serve us really well. So I think it's a great selection.
Commissioner Unrich.
Yeah, I think it's a great team too. I know the first two, the third one I didn't know anything about. So I asked two friends of mine that are mayors in Alameda County that both served on the board and were on the committee, and they spoke extremely highly of Clifford Moss, about the clear logic of why, how, when, and how to present this. Ours is a little easier, to be honest, because we're just asking for renewal. They were asking for a big jump. And so I'm really pleased to see this. And I like the idea, because I was been around for the last one, all the way back to Measure J's when we did it. This, I think, is better organized. I think this is a better approach. Got a great leader there, tallest guy in the room, but next to Sue. But it really is a logical way to do it. I think we're better organized, and I think we have the right staff on board now to help support this.
Commissioner Xavier.
I was involved. I was on the Expenditure Plan Advisory Committee for what became called Measure X. It failed. So I have a much better feeling about this particular group of people. And I'm hoping that it works, because we need it.
Commissioner Nowak.
He looks at me and then he is like rolls his eyes, and then he calls on me. Did you notice that?
I'm thinking, I'm trying to.
He does that to me too.
I want to say Sue.
Yeah, well, that's okay with me too. I do that all the time, so that's right. Yeah, forgetting my last name, okay.
I had to think for a minute.
Yeah, that's right. You know, I think the selection is great. I think while it's only a renewal, I think we do have some challenges. We don't have that big project like the fourth bore of the tunnel as a signature project necessarily at this point. And so it's going to be it's going to be really important that we really get a sense of what this county needs in this area in order to develop a good plan. So I just wanted to, I think the team is great. It's really important that we really coalesce around the projects and the programs that we really want to support in order to get this done. So I just wanted to sort of add that piece into the discussion. Thanks.
Any other comments, questions? Terry Ann, is there any public comments?
We have no public comment, written or verbal.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Terry Ann, could you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Armstrong?
Yes.
Commissioner Arnrich?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernal?
Yes.
Commissioner Burgess?
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Noack?
Yes?
Commissioner Obringer?
Yes.
Commissioner Xavier?
Aye.
Vice Chair G?
Yes.
Chair Meadows?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Terry Ann. The next item is an action item from the Planning Committee to be presented by Danielle, seeking approval of the revised fiscal year 2025-26 Transportation Fund for clean air projects that comply with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's board-approved policies.
Thank you, Chair Meadows and Commissioners. As you know, this TFCA 40% fund list of projects came to you at the previous board meeting in October. The Transplan RTPC board met the day after due to a rescheduling of their meeting. They, in that meeting, voted to reallocate the East County available funds to be entirely for the Try My Ride expansion and eliminated the walk and roll project funding. So it is now coming back to this board for either rejection or approval and incorporation in our final TFCA list of projects. And one kind of important piece of information is that this list of projects was due to TFCA November 7th. They have not issued us an extension on this. Their legal team is still working through whether or not this will be able to be accepted and finalized.
Thank you, Danielle. Are there any comments or questions from the Authority Board? Are there any public comments, Terry Ann?
We have no public comment, written or verbal.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Oh. I'll make the motion since it was partially my fault that this all happened.
Terry Ann, I hope we have that. Could you conduct a roll call vote, please?
By Burgess, second by Carlson. Commissioner Armstrong?
Yes.
Commissioner Arnrich?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernal?
Yes.
Commissioner Burgess?
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Noack?
Yes.
Commissioner Obringer?
Yes.
Commissioner Xavier?
Aye.
Vice Chair G?
Yes.
Chair Meadows?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Terry Ann. That concludes our regular agenda items. We have no correspondence in the package. Next is associated committee reports. We have a meeting report for October from Transplan, which I think you just heard part of it. And notice of cancellation for the November meeting from SWAT provided in the agenda packet. We're now moving to the Authority Board staff comments, board and staff comments. My comment, I hope you all enjoy Oakley the next 2 days. I will not be there.
Wait a minute, you invited us there and you're not going to be there?
Well, I had a previously planned conference I had to attend, and then was told it was going to be tomorrow and Friday. So, I will be in Utah. Are there any other reports from Commissioners.
I apologize, I won't be able to attend either day. I'll be at the Delta Stewardship Council tomorrow, and then I'll be at the San Joaquin Joint Powers the next day.
Commissioner Armstrong.
Yeah, I just wanted to announce that San Ramon received an award from the American Council of Engineering Companies for the Iron Horse Trail Bollinger Canyon overcrossing, and it was the honor award, but that puts us in running for the Golden State Award and potentially to be entered into a national competition in DC. We'll receive that award November 19th down at in Anaheim, down at the Disneyland Hotel.
Of course.
Congratulations, San Ramon. Commissioner Onrich.
I just want to mention, I was on a keynote panel today at the Clean Buses Conference by Global Mass today. And I was there to represent Transportation Planning Agency and what the future looks like. Great group of people, and there was an autonomous shuttle manufacturer that did a presentation. And it looks very similar to one of the other ones that we were looking at. And the panel that I was on with was Kansas City Transit Agency, San Mateo County, and Santa Clara. Very interesting outlook from transit operators and what they view the future of. And it was really about zero emissions and how people are planning under the climate that we're in now, how to get there.
Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you. So I've got a few things here. So I attended the CalCog Board, California Council of Governments Board meeting. A few things. They had an October housing law and policy update in Sacramento. It was very well received. HCD attended and was very impressed with the work that CalCog does, so that was really great. Also, the CalCog's Leadership Academy, this is for mid-career professionals working in regional government. The 8th cohort has just ended up, and it's a wonderful training area for people who want to go into regional government. They were there with us next door at our board meeting. And lastly, just to let you know, there's discussion of reforming SB 375, vehicle miles traveled. There's 2 groups working on it. One is CalSTA, the other one is 4 regional metropolitan planning organizations like MTC. And I know that Bill Higgins of CalCog is kind of talking to both of those groups. And hopefully something will come out of it that will be acceptable to all parties concerned. So that's one thing. Second, the San Francisco Bay Ferry recently, this couple of days ago, launched the last of their diesel ferries, clean diesel ferry, the MV Zalapus. That's for sea lion. It was named by a 7-year-old boy. Carries 320 passengers, goes at about 36 knots. That's about 40 miles an hour. It'll be used for a long haul right now, say from San Francisco up to Vallejo, because electric ferries can't go that far. But that's the last diesel. And then in 2027, the first of the electric ferries that SF Bay Ferry has ordered should be coming, and there'll be 5 of those total. The last thing was something really, really exciting. At the Focus on the Future conference, I signed up right away to go on the Zoox Robotaxi. And so I went, and our construction manager, Brandon, went. We were in the same Robotaxi. It was so cool. This is the thing we have been waiting for. I got to tell you, it is just amazing. It's like Waymo, but it seats 4 people, front and back. It's a smooth ride. It's safe. It went around the Mission. It stopped for a bicycle on Valencia. It stopped when it was in back of a robo-taxi, a senior taxi, and went around a car. And then a big, like dump truck was backing into a parking space, and it saw that. Really, really great. And I was terribly, terribly impressed with all of this. So, for Waymo and for Zoox, I think the thing that really strikes me is they're vertically integrated from R&D up to delivery. They do all of the operations. They both have parent companies that are behind them that have lots of resources. Waymo's got Google or Meta, and Zoox has Amazon. That's really, really cool. And then the one thing that I talked to some of them about, and I know our executive director, is eventually, hopefully, these companies will come out here to Contra Costa County, and maybe in years to come, there could be an opportunity for us to have them provide first mile, last mile service in a very geo-fenced area. So my example always is, and I see Matt shaking his head, some like end up in El Cerrito in the hills. AC Transit is not operating that bus anymore. So if you could get one of those, like a Zoox or a Waymo, to take people down to one of the 2 BART stations, that's all, at a cost that people could afford, that would be really great. And there may be other opportunities here in our county, so it's something that we should think about in the future. Anyway, right now, you folks can sign up and go ride the Zoox taxi in the Mission for free. I urge you to go and do so. It's really cool.
Representatives, comments? Representative Noack?
Whichever hat I've got on. So we spent the morning on the TOC policy, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, and all of you probably hate at some point. But it was about 10 till 1 today, listening to various input. The staff of MTC has made a proposal to put off tying OBAG $4 in 26 and 27, and then using incentive dollars in 2028. This is so that there's quite a few changes that could be made, some changes to the framework, some changes to some of the items. For example, instead of rent stabilization, if you adhere to the new state stricter rent stabilization laws, that would count. Candace Anderson had a brilliant idea that cities don't necessarily have their own rental assistance programs, things like that, but if the county provides it to all the cities, that might count for it. So there are some good positive changes potentially coming. It has to be, we're still going to meet because there was still a lot of discussion on numerous pieces to the TOC. We're going to form an ad hoc committee to work on it over the next month or so. We do need to get approved in January so that all the cities understand what or what's not involved in their applications for the OBAG $4 call for project starts in January or February. So I just wanted to let everybody know that there are some changes coming on that. The proposals, I think, are an improvement for a lot of cities that are struggling, taking a look at this. And we're trying to address those as many as we can, but still use the TOC policy as an incentive to build some density around our transit hubs. So I think that's about it for right now.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Real quick, if that's okay.
We'll go back to commissioner comments. Commissioner Carlson.
Just real quick on kind of in theme with the Plan Bay Area 2050 and the TFCA and the funding issues. This morning at the Air District, we recommended the approval of $23.3 million in EV charging infrastructure grants, of which about $1.3 million will come to Contra Costa County, hitting Antioch, Walnut Creek, and Concord, both level 2 and DC fast chargers. So there is funding out there that comes through the state through vehicle registration fees that we can tap into.
Thank you. At this time, we'll do executive staff comments. Tim, please provide your brief report.
Well, I have a very exciting announcement. We have promoted Matt Kelly to Director of Planning officially.
Congratulations, Matt.
Yeah, well done, Matt. Matt has really stepped up and really taken the role very seriously, and it's been fun to engage with him at the director level, and he's been really contributing and adding a lot of value to the team, and always adds value to the team, and really excited to bring him into the leadership team officially and being part of this process, particularly with the TEP. He had played a big role with the TEP process with selecting the technical consultant team. So really appreciate it, Matt, and congratulations. And with that, I just want to, this month has been really a crazy month, I think, for all of us, and I think every month is crazy, but I'm really proud of the team here at CCTA. It's been really a fun month. If you look at the executive director report, there's been just a lot of out and about in the community with all of the team here. There was a strong presence of CCTA at Focus on the Future. We had Lindy on a panel, Danielle on a panel, and then Matt and Lindy were, Matt and Stephanie were doing a poster presentation around some of the VMT work we've done with Innovate 680. And Brandon and Hisham were at the APWA conference as well. And so just a really strong presence out there with presenting and talking about all the great things we're doing here at CCTA. And the admin team actually has been doing some really cool training in terms of getting to their certified municipal clerk certification. And so really kind of supporting their professional development. And they went to 2 conferences this month as well. And so, or in October. So it's just been exciting and seeing the team really meld together. As you all know, we've been doing a lot of hiring, here at CCTA. And so it's been really fun to really see the team come together and build the team. And it's been exciting to see everyone kind of work together. And I'm excited for the future here at CCTA. The other thing I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about is just some activities that have been kind of going on. We had some really great on the accessible transportation front. We actually had one-on-one meetings with all of the hospitals in Contra Costa County. So with Contra Costa Health, Kaiser, the VA hospital, as well as John Muir. And we were really kind of starting to talk to them about the One Call, One Click and some of the accessible transportation programs that we already have available to them and how we can better support them and also kind of bring them into the fold. We are planning an accessibility workshop in February. And so we're doing our due diligence with our stakeholders to kind of get everyone back at the table and engage on the accessible transportation front. The other thing that we also did is Andy just knocked out of the park. We did a 1-week demonstration around transit bus on shoulder demonstration, and that was done in partnership with County Connection. And they just were a fantastic partner in supporting that every step of the way out at Gomentum Station by providing the buses, the staff, the resources to be able to make this happen. And it just was a real testament of the leadership of CCTA, as well as the leadership of Andy and the team to really influence state policy. I mean, I think one of the benefits of having Gomentum Station is we're able to really test and do this kind of research and real world kind of demonstrations at Gomentum Station in a secure and safe environment, which not a lot of agencies are allowed to do that. And I know that, bus on shoulder is a priority for this board and prioritizing transit's a priority. And this was a fantastic opportunity to bring in some of the heavy hitters from Caltrans headquarters, from Sacramento, from MTC, from CHP. We had the Golden Gate chief of CHP, all at Gomentum Station to kind of see how bus on shoulder will operate. And because it takes a lot, like when you read the guidelines, it makes more sense when you actually see it like in action, right? And so what's going on is the state is developing these draft guidelines for bus on shoulder, which has some quirks to them. I'm not going to go into the details, but it's interesting to have the stakeholders see their policy and their guidelines like in action. And so Caltrans headquarters actually was literally waiting for this demonstration and before they finalized the state guidelines for distribution. So that just gives you kind of a testament of the amount of influence that we have, at the state level in these areas. And so it was really exciting. The other exciting area that we've been talking about is Ryan, our Deputy Executive for Projects Operations. We've been engaging with a consortium model for eVTOLs, for electric vehicle takeoff landing vehicles. And so I know Commissioner Burgess is really passionate about this with Byron Airport and the work that the county is doing out there. And so just for some background, the President Trump administration issued an executive order back over the summer, basically creating a new eVTOL integration partnership program, which was supposed to be a public-private partnership with both the public sector and the private sector. And so we have been engaging with Monterey DART. DART stands for Drone Automation Research and Technologies, and that is the home of Joby and Archer in terms of their research and development for urban air mobility. And also we've been working with NASA Ames as well as Caltrans, as well as the county and Byron Airport and Elroy Air, one of our partners at Byron Airport, to come up with essentially a grant application for this. They're going to select 5 teams across the country. And this is going to have 3 projects. One project in the Bakersfield region supporting medical supplies and passenger delivery in Bakersfield. Another one's going to be goods movement delivery for DOD and middle mile goods delivery, which is what Elroy Air does at Byron Airport. And then obviously passenger delivery with Joby and Archer and Wisk. And so it's a consortium model. It's a statewide application. It's highly supported by the California State Transportation Agency, CalSTA, and the Secretary of Transportation, Tokes, and also the Deputy Secretary, Emily Warren. There's a huge amount of support to bring all these people together to have a strong statewide application to be successful with this program. There's no funding attached, and so we were successful to secure funding by Caltrans to support our time and research for the program. And so I don't even know what it stands for, but it's called RDAC proposal. So we were able to secure some funding, roughly about $750,000 a year to kind of support the administration of the program if we're successful nationally. So very exciting program. eVTOL's coming, it's here. And I think it's really important that we plan for it. And I know with the countywide transportation plan, I know Danielle and the team and Matt are working really hard on how to really plan for the future when it comes to eVTOLs and air mobility. So that's the other kind of exciting program that we're getting involved in. So that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Tim. Calendars were included in the agenda packet. Next item is closed session. We'll be heading over to the Diablo Conference Room for a closed session to provide a performance evaluation for Timothy Hale pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. All right, we reconvene in open session. Are you ready? Okay, we reconvene in open session. The authority board has nothing to report out. That concludes our meeting. This meeting is adjourned at 8:57 PM to the authority board workshop at 8:30 AM tomorrow morning at the Oakley City Hall Council Chambers. Thank you for coming to Oakley.